Cavell Leitch. On behalf of the Christchurch Speedway Association, just be aware of the 10 minutes because it does include questions.
Thank you. The name's Schulte, and I'm accompanied here by John Mitchell, who's the club steward. And I have, and I hope it's been circulated, provided just a brief summary of where the Speedway has reached, or the position it's reached in terms of where PC 52 has gotten to and what it sees as the more sensible approach from this point on. And in the circumstances of what has transpired in terms of attempts to resolve the appeals on PC 52, the Speedway finds itself in a position where it does support the car club's request to withdraw the plan change in favour of inserting new provisions by way of phase 2 of the Christchurch replacement plan process. And as I note there, the main reasons for this position are well, the financial costs to the club, to the association of continuing in the Environment Court process. It's been a very costly process to date for a club which is also self-sustaining and on a fairly limited budget in terms of what it does. Also the uncertainty of the outcome at the Environment Court, and in particular the uncertainty and the costs associated, or further costs associated with the use of a Section 293 process, which is to deal with matters that are beyond the scope of either appeal, and would, as Ms Dewar noted, probably result in further public notification of those provisions only. And the outcome of that, of course, is still up in the air, and time and finances are going to be taken in that process as well. And also the ability to actually submit to the hearing panel on the replacement district plan and on the new set of rules that would be presumably still based on the matters that were advanced at the mediation. That to the Speedway is actually quite important because, as I note later on, the Speedway didn't actually submit on PC 52 an instance which it was instantly regrettable about when PC 52's decision by the Commissioner came out. This was an oversight. It was based pretty much on the fact that the Speedway had worked quite closely with council staff in terms of establishing what was going to be in PC 52 and whether or not it could actually live within those limits. And essentially it could. And I think one thing that has to be said is the Speedway is a, I won't say a bit player, but a smaller participant in the entire process than either the car club or Quieter Please, in terms of its role has been limited in terms of what it's trying to protect has been quite limited, but at the same time it's been absolutely essential for it to be part of it because, as was also mentioned, one of those provisions that was included was the so-called same-day rule, which would have meant that on any weekend day that the car club was operating, the Speedway would have been left out in the cold and would not have been able to operate at all, which would have essentially have ended the Speedway's existence at Ruapuna. And of course the Speedway has been at Ruapuna for a significant number of years, over 55 years now. And it's a proud wee organisation that has produced 3 world champions. I think John probably knows them all in terms of, is it Ronnie?
Yeah, the club's actually produced 3 world champions. It was Ronnie Moore was first. It was Barry Briggs and Ivan Major came from the Christchurch Speedway Association as well. And we've also sent younger people across to England who can race in the National League and make it their living. So there's been a lot come out of the Christchurch Speedway, and we also train younger children from around about 12 upwards with small quarter midgets, and they progress through. So it is a sporting complex as well as an entertainment venue. We make our money out of the entertainment side, which is Saturday night, and with that money we continue operating.
I guess the short point though is that the Speedway itself does represent a significant financial and historical investment at Ruapuna, and its current lease for the site actually expires in 2053, so you can understand that its reasons for being involved in PC 52 were pretty existential. In terms of where things have gotten to, and I don't think I need to dwell too much on the process that's gone to date, But I will comment on the fact that throughout the process of trying to resolve the appeals, there have been improvements made, and I think from the Speedway's point of view, its ability to make significant improvements, certainly in terms of reducing hours or anything, has been limited, but it has in fact changed its hours of operation, so it was able to finish slightly earlier, starting slightly earlier as well. It's made changes to things like its public address system, which was noted as a point of annoyance, and it has actively participated in working group processes which have included the residents and have been something that they want to continue with. I guess though, to sum up, and we won't waste any more of your time, but the options that the Speedway sees for the council are basically to proceed to try and fix a plan change that it sees as having some significant flaws through a process that has already consumed significant amounts of the Speedway's limited funds and others' funds, obviously, and will inevitably consume more in terms of appeals which are yet to be determined. The other option is to start again in an informed way, based on the outcomes of the mediation that were agreed, including by the council, and include a workable rules package in phase 2 of the replacement Christchurch district plan. And the final comment we made there, which may preempt some of the questions, is that the basis for the Speedway support of the second option is reflective, in part at least, of the fact that it is not confident that the parties can in fact achieve an agreed outcome at the Environment Court. Thank you.
So just to clarify, apart from the differences between the track and the style of vehicles, Speedway is predominantly races at night. So when you're explaining about the double day, you would have a Ruapuna course race during the day, and that evening, so if people are coming out, they'd have a full day of racing from the day to the evening, with Ruapuna during the day and Speedway at night. But predominantly, your events, as in race events, are in evenings.
They're all, excuse me, they're all in the evenings. And yes, I wouldn't go as far. The way the rule was actually formulated, it didn't require a race meeting at Ruapuna Raceway for the Speedway to be left out in the cold. It could be any motorised activity on Ruapuna Raceway itself would have meant that the Speedway wasn't able to operate on that day. To be fair, I do have to be open about the fact that it is one of the areas that the residents were willing to move on, and so that there were solutions that were looked at that particular issue. So, in all fairness, it may not have been the thing that broke the camel's back at the end of the day, but it was a significant issue, and I think it's one that, because of where we've reached and the fact that mediation, or the success at mediation, can't be guaranteed, it would actually come back on the table and it would have to be dealt with through the court process as well.
So the tuning of vehicles for leading into oh, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Your claim that Plan Change 52 has got significant flaws, particularly in relation to point 3 on the handout that we've got here. Plan Change 52 contained definitions that would have captured everyday activities that are essential to its operation. Can you give us some examples of those everyday activities?
The principal example was the definition for motorised activities, which would actually have captured things like lawn mowing and delivery trucks and things which would have actually meant that a day which the car club was allowed under the plan could in fact have been lost by negligible activity at the time. Just to add a little bit of detail, under PC 52, the Speedway has 15 race events per year and 5 practice events per year. And there were some other days there which, the purpose of which we weren't really quite sure of. They came through the Commissioner's decision. The way that the definitions read, particularly the motorised activity, risked to the fact that some of those event days could in fact have been lost to things that were not in any way associated with an event.
Okay, thank you.
My question was about the Ruapuna noise logger. Do you guys use that as well? Does that apply to you?
Our events are also recorded by the noise logger.
Okay, and so how many breaches have you had and how many complaints have you had?
John?
We've had no complaints and we haven't been over the 95 dBAs at the boundary.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Given, I'd be interested in just understanding how you compare to other speedways around New Zealand and why you think that the Environment Court would lead to uncertainty as opposed to the uncertainty of a new hearing panel and a new process being started that might actually come in with a more extreme limitation on what you can do. So we got, you were here, you saw the information we got. It would be good just to get a view on how you compare to the rest of New Zealand and why you think there's not as much uncertainty with a new hearings panel.
I count Western Springs out of it. It's a very unique track. Once again, it's totally owned by the council. It's next to the zoo, and it's a different story altogether. The rest of the tracks around New Zealand are pretty much the way we operate. And if you take it down in time, we start our first race at 6:30. It's all over at 10, 13 times a year. And on that, we've got 5 practices. So if you take it over a year, the place is hardly used. And pretty well much of the speedways right through New Zealand are the same. They all run about 15 events per year. And that's to do because tracks wheel and deal with one another, I suppose you could say. We use their competitors, they use ours, and it's 26 of them all operate on a Saturday night. So it gets quite complicated.
Just addressing the point on uncertainty, though, I think the uncertainty is an uncertainty as to the length of process, as to the outcomes. I don't know that the outcomes would necessarily be fatal to the Speedway in terms of through the Environment Court. We just, it is speculation though, and we don't know. And the position that it came to in mediation, and because it is being treated as a package result at the moment, it does provide a degree of uncertainty which we think is less likely based on the information that the council now has and from being a party to these proceedings and its understanding of the actual operations of Ruapuna and the Speedway now, which I think are actually much better than they were. Thank you.
Any member of the public? You guys have a meeting upstairs just for 10 minutes, so I'm going to suggest that we adjourn for 20 minutes and return here actually at 11. That's okay? That's a long 20 minutes.